Ngā mihi nui e ho mā, kei te whakaronga mai koutou ki te rongopaia ihu karaiti, mai iti te pukapuka a machu. Greetings friends again, it's great to be with you. You're listening to another gospel reflection coming to us from the book of Matthew this week, Matthew 20 verses 17 to 28. I'm Buckshot, coming to you from my roof where I'm isolating and wobbling through a week of recovering from COVID infection. We're also halfway through the church season of Lent, that time of self-examination and preparation to celebrate the death of Jesus and his subsequent resurrection. That moment in history is pivotal to all that Christian faith is about. And surprisingly, I find many Christians who seem to miss the reasons for and reality of that event. Our disciples on the road today, heading to Jerusalem with Jesus, have not grasped yet the magnitude of what and where Jesus is heading either. But in their defence, they are still learning what the good news of Christ's kingdom really is, as it is so counter to what they have grown up with. They're slow learners, and sometimes we are too. Today is the third time that Jesus has taken them aside privately to explain clearly that he is going to suffer and die in Jerusalem at the hands of the powerful. Today we also are in a terrible moment in history, as our club brothers, our whānau, are facing the Russian military invading and destroying their home in the Ukraine. Although this is not such a unique situation, because war is actually raging in a number of other places around the globe too. And also across the West, we seem to be engaged in some kind of culture war at the moment, with violence erupting on our streets regularly. Even in Wellington 2 weeks ago, with the mandate protesters removed from Parliament forcefully, we saw violence we hadn't seen for a long time in our country. Now, these same realities were reflecting life in the Palestine that Jesus lived in too. We can pick up the threads of Roman violence from the Gospels easily, and also the threads of the rich structuring things so that the poor struggle to eke out a living. The good news of Christ today was that there was a way to change society for the better without using violence and force. I truly feel deeply for our Ukraine friends facing tanks, missiles and incredible destruction. It must be awful to be there right now. How do you maintain any sense of human dignity, love for your neighbour or even your enemy in that environment? So this idea of stepping away from violence is still really foreign to us, even 2,000 years later. 2,000 years we've been hearing this teaching from Christ. But on the road that day to Jerusalem, James and John had no idea what Jesus was on about. They saw him going up to Jerusalem to incite a coup, to throw out the current rulers and take over himself. So they thought it was great if they could get some cabinet positions in his new government, despite 3 times Jesus having said by now, I am going up there to die, to suffer at the hands of the leaders. I am going to show how to love, how to walk away from power and undermine it. And incredibly, there's been some beautiful times in history when community leaders have embraced this way of Jesus and seen violent and awful regimes turned on their head. There are many debates and conversations about just war and about how we might deal with violent governments. Some, like James and John, choose to go down the road of seeking power to be able to change the system with benevolent force. Jesus today calls us to walk with him to the cross, to die, to lay down our lust for power, to believe that violence is not human and must be discarded. We are to pick up love of neighbour and service instead. Gandhi, that great Indian man of peace inspired by Jesus, is quoted as saying that the way of non-violence will not prevail from words or strength of argument. He said, it shall be proved by persons living it in their lives with utter disregard of the consequences to themselves. He proved that with his linen skirt and weaving loom. I have not lived in a war zone, but I have had a number of confrontations with grumpy people with weapons seeking my harm. It's not easy to choose this path of non-violence. Maybe it is just an aspirational, wonderful idea. But when groups of people choose this way of Jesus, violence can be turned on its head and new ways of living can become achievable. As we continue our Lent journey to that Golgotha cross, may we be able to let go of our lust for power, walk away from the violence we hold in our hearts, so that space can open up for love to grow and for community to thrive. If you find these ideas strange, check out the text for today below in the text, as this is a clear teaching and example of Christ. Of course, this is risky behaviour, but continuing with violence will only continue to make people suffer and die. Te Whiti and Tohu of Parihaka here in New Zealand were right when they chose this road of non-violence also, to stop people being killed. But they suffered dearly for it to begin with. Lent, that season where we prepare to suffer and die with Christ, so that we may break through to the resurrection and hope of things being totally different. Let's encourage each other to choose this way of Jesus and see what could happen as a result. Can we dare to imagine a different world to the one we have now? Rangamāria kia tātou katoa. May the peace of God be with us all. Cheers.